Well, yesterday, the Daily Mail reported that President Biden did know about Hunter's business dealings with a Chinese oil giant, the CEFC. As we've discussed here before, files on Hunter's laptop disclosed by the Daily Mail show that Hunter struck a multi-million-dollar deal with the CEFC after touting his family's connections. President Biden allegedly spoke to his son about this 2018 New York Times story that detailed Hunter's deals with the Chinese criminal dubbed the Spy Chief of China. The Daily Mail even obtained a voicemail off Hunter's iPhone from Joe Biden telling his son that he's, quote, in the clear in regards to that now infamous New York Times story. Let's take a listen.
Hey, pal, it's Dad. It's 8:15 on Wednesday night. If you get a chance, give me a call. Nothing urgent. Just want to talk to you. I thought the article, at least the thing online, that's going to be printed tomorrow in the Times, was good. I think it's clear. And anyway, if you get a chance, give me a call. I love you.
This is a major pivot for the president, who's denied knowing anything about Hunter's dealings for years, and now calls from Republican members of Congress for the president to come clean. While former DOJ prosecutor Jim Trusty said the voicemail is a huge integrity test for the FBI and the Attorney General.
So, I mean, I guess, though, Biden could still say, well, when he didn't have any knowledge of Hunter's dealings, which I don't know how plausible that actually is, he could say this doesn't necessarily contradict that because, well, he just read about whatever was in the Times, just like you or I don't know anything about Hunter Biden's dealings beyond what we've read in the media. But I guess if he says, seems like you're in the clear, that could still
that could
be
also
based
just
on what he
mean
read.
it looks like the article doesn't indict you, doesn't make you seem culpable.
So I don't know how much this really changes anything. It's obviously it was always, the question is how much Joe Biden knows or knew about Hunter Biden's attempts to, or how much of a participant he was in Hunter's efforts to, lobby interest on Hunter's own behalf and with Chinese and other influence, which Hunter was clearly trying to do, and then made it sound the big man, et cetera. I have a phone line to the big man.
Yeah.
But we haven't yet, the other shoe has not dropped.
Yeah, the problem with this story is that, it was presented in the context of an electoral choice between a president who has shown shameless levels of nepotism toward his own family and a presidential candidate in Joe Biden who there's some
also
of the same,
nepotism.
Right? Like so the
who
part
did the
I think,
same thing.
Yeah, so I think that part of the
Hunter's
problem.
role in the what? It was Amtrak, right? That was a.
Yeah, I mean, he's gotten job after job for his
nepotism.
entire life just for being Joe Biden's kid. Now, the
no
question is whether or not Joe Biden participated in that, helped. I feel like in the Amtrak situation, he got a boost. Whether or not he was, participant
Isn't
in this
Joe
China
Biden
situation.
Amtrak's #1 customer or something?
Yeah, he's the plaque.
Actually, I think the only time I saw him in real life was on the Amtrak. I saw him on the Amtrak once.
Did you say anything? Did you ask for a photograph? Did you get a selfie?
No, I did not. I think I was so furious about having to wear a mask now.
It was recently.
Gonna go off on a tangent. It was I'm getting my stories mixed up. It was it might have been while he was vice president.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I had to cover a story early in my journalism career.
I don't look
Delaware.
fondly on my time spent on the Amtrak, nor does
Well,
anyone else.
I actually do love taking the train.
What?
But I had to go to Delaware for a story, and they have the plaque in the Delaware train station. It's like the Joe R. Biden train station. It's very clear when you get off. He's obviously very proud of that. But the point is that I think a lot of people didn't pay as much attention to the story on both. On the Democratic side, at least, because it was like, what are you going to do with this? I don't have another option. And I think that's a real indictment of our political system and the candidates that are offered up for us to choose from, that this has not become normalized. It's always been the way things are. But it's frustrating that even when these stories become public, there isn't any kind of apologia, no contrition. Right. It just seems like the new status quo.
Well, Joe Biden is the ultimate political insider, been in D.C. for, so decades and decades and decades and decades, long time to accrue influence, et cetera, to help out people like his son Hunter. Then on the other hand, you have Trump, the consummate political outsider, but also close to the levels, the levers of power, and able to do.
Hey, son-in-law, fix this real Palestine.
The Biden-Trump kind of demonstration of the way just corruption pervades the upper levels of our politics, of our corporate culture, and the way those two things work together. Yeah,
I mean, that's why, sorry to say, a lot of people were first drawn to Trump because they felt like he was an outsider. He proved that he had insider instincts. And then that's the same reason a lot of the people in 2016 were drawn to Bernie Sanders, because despite being in Congress for a long time, he had really framed himself as a political independent, had picked the kind of fights that made him perceived to be an independent by other people in Congress who knew that he wasn't going to kind of bend the knee to whatever interest group there was. Isolating himself in Vermont was a way to protect himself from some of the shenanigans that go on in other bigger states where there's less of that kind of live free or die kind of frontiersman mentality. And it worked. And a lot of people were really hopeful that someone, we tested Trump, but that didn't work. But a lot of people wanted to see what would happen if a Bernie-style figure got into Congress. And I'm curious whether someone like, an Andrew Yang or Marianne Williamson will be able to capture that same kind of energy. People have been talking about a number of other celebrities running. I saw Howard Stern made a tweet the other day that said maybe it's time for him to put his hat in the ring because he's so frustrated over all of this Roe v. Wade stuff. Is that what's going to save us from being another outsider?
I don't think so. I mean, we've got to tear all these systems down, not replace them with new, different, more outsider people who are going to be unique and interesting, because the system corrupts and wears them down.
I mean, I tend to agree.
Destroy the system.
FDR, the most popular president of all time, got in there and gutted the government. He gutted the government he really did drain the swamp and provided the example that a lot of other people have been talking smack about.
I like Calvin Coolidge.
All right. Well, we'll have to do a panel at some point
on favorite
ranking.
We
president.
were doing me, Ryan, and Kim were doing presidential history trivia on the show for a while because a viewer, a fan of the show, sent us a book he had written about trivia, American presidential trivia, and there were some tough questions. Who
was winning? Ryan.
Ryan knows a lot. Ryan is very knowledgeable. Kim was on the delay, so it was really hard for her to chime in remotely.
Yeah.
She was feeling the system was unfair, which it was.
Well, look, we just talked at the top of the show about whether or not the new revelations coming out of the 1-6 hearings are going to have any effect on the Republican voter, on the generalized attitudes toward Donald Trump. You seem to think that
my view being no. I also don't think, by the same token, I think this story, the Hunter Biden story, interests people because it's salacious. It involves drugs and sex and prostitutes and some funny images. But what matters to voters, I don't think is actually this.
That might also be true, but
gas prices.
I would similarly say with this, as with the Donald Trump stuff, I don't want that to be the case. I don't think it's right for these things not to matter. I think it ruins us all when these things don't matter. And if people are serious about there being a 2024 challenger to Joe Biden, I would argue that they should start sticking the landing on why this story is relevant to who Joe Biden is as a candidate, not just in a salacious way, not in let me just post pictures of your son dealing with addiction. That's not the point at all. But to make a case about corruption that, frankly, Bernie never made. People on the campaign started to make that case. Zephyr Teachout
He didn't really make it against Hillary either. I remember his line, I'm sick of hearing about Hillary's emails.
Well, that's
remember
true.
that?
He pulled some punches, but specifically Zephyr Teachout, who was, a surrogate for the campaign, wrote an article in The Guardian about detailing, as someone with an expertise in background in corporate corruption, about why Joe Biden should be characterized as such. And Bernie wouldn't stand by it and threw the article under the bus. And I do think that people have to start, if there is any kind of sincere populist movement in this country from the right or left, they have to be able to make the case about why this is a problem, why Trump's corruption is a problem, and not take it to the salacious level. Nobody cares about the P-tape aspect or your son is addicted to drugs aspect. Talk about the catering to influence and buying influence and what that means, and connected to our geopolitical situation in Ukraine and what's going on around the world. Because I think the American people really do care about
in a way that
stuff.
hurts the American people or is indifferent to their interests. It's not influence peddling to get Americans access to more oil or better price or
Sure.
some sane foreign policy. It's influence peddling for no other reason than personal enrichment,
Sure.
even if it comes at the expense of the American people.
Absolutely.
As we've seen time and time again in these dealings, both legitimate and illegitimate, both above the fray and then in secret, that are bad deals that hurt the country, that are not in the country's best interest. Whether it's our announced Ukraine policy or whether what we're doing covertly with Ukraine. It's not good.
Yeah.
Well, Team Rising will join us next. Stick around for that.